Well, Happy New Year. I'm Ed Marshall, your host of Money Talks. It's hard to believe it's already 2019, and economists all over the world are predicting what the future holds. Well, some local economists also say they know what good things are being held for us right here in the river region. We'll tell you about what they saw in their crystal ball when we come back. So stay with us. A Louisiana Economic Outlook report predicts the New Orleans metropolitan area will add 6,500 jobs, or 1.1%, in 2019, and 9,100 jobs, or 1.6%, in 2020, ranking 7th out of Louisiana's 9 metro areas for percentage job growth. The report points to big wins that were gained last year in the technology and industrial construction sectors. All of this is welcome news for the recent graduates around the metro area. Delgado Community College helped make the career dreams of 818 regional residents come true. With all the pomp and circumstance fitting for the occasion, the college conferred degrees, diplomas, and certificates to the anxious graduating class. Delgado Chancellor Will Wainwright addressed the assembly, and Dr. Mustafa Sawar, Interim Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at Delgado, presided during the commencement exercises. Erica McConduit, a member of the Louisiana Community and Technical College System, LCTCS, Board of Supervisors, delivered the keynote address. Dedicated to ensuring economic equity, McConduit works deeply in workforce and economic development, and she is also heavily engaged in education, providing direct service and advocacy in quality early learning, K through 12, and post-secondary opportunities. In other news, Louisiana Congressman Cedric Richmond says, as a result of the Congressional Black Caucus, 19 historically black land-grant universities will now get millions of dollars that states have been denying them for years. According to federal law, states are required to match federal funding dollar for dollar for land-grant universities, but many HBCUs have not been getting what they are owed. In fact, according to the report, a 2013 report says that the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities found that from 2010 through 2012, 61% of the historically black land-grant universities did not receive 100% of the one-to-one matching funds from their respective states. Well, to give us more on this and a closer perspective, we have in the studio, well, we should say back in the studio now, the president of the Louisiana Association of Cooperatives, Mr. Harvey Reed. Good to see you again.
Nice to meet you, Mr.
Harvey, tell us more about this, what this money, where it's coming from, and what kind of pot is it coming out of? I understand it's out of like funds of like what, over 800 million?
Billion.
I'm sorry.
$1 billion. Mm-hmm. Oh, those ones are, this is the Farm Bill. They finally ratified the Farm Bill, just before last year ended, and they came up with the $80-something billion of funding. Out of those funding, this is where the money is going to be pulled from. I think they'll be receiving about $80 million plus another $20 million for the land-grant universities. And out of the 19 land-grant universities, they will be receiving those funds in order for them to help them to recruit students and also to do research and what have you.
Okay.
And just hopefully that they can use these funds to also reach out to those farmers who are in dire need as well.
Yeah. When we talk about, for people who don't say HBCU universities, those black, what are some of them that we can kind of relate to here in Louisiana?
In Louisiana, we look at, HBCUs, like Dillard, even Xavier, all those especially are considered HBCUs. When you get down to the land-grant university, those are the ones that are designated through the states and what have you under the congressional mandate, such as LSU, Southern University, and Grambling. Those are considered land-grant university.
Okay, gotcha. I want to just be clear on that. So why do you think the Congressional Black Caucus took such a while to get this funding through?
It took quite a while for them to really work their way through our senators and also through the House, because it was also controlled by the Republicans and what have you.
So the new administration.
Yes, under the old administration, it was kind of rough for them to get anything passed through. So this time, a lot of haggling And I know there's going to be a transition because midterm was coming up for some of the congressional people. They had to come up with a farm bill. It took them over a year past the deadline to get this farm bill through.
Okay, and let's talk about that farm bill. Monies will be used for these minority farmers as well.
Well,
correct?
yes, it's supposed to be used for those particular farmers and also the underserved communities as well, of people of color.
Okay.
So this is why they fought, the Congressional Black Caucus fought hard to make sure that these funds were designated for those particular areas. So in order for them to make sure that they're upgraded and get more, they should have gotten more money, in my opinion. But anyway, the $80 million is something to start with. You know.
Yeah. Is there a reason why so many low-income black communities and minority communities really are food deserts, meaning that there's really no place for people to actually access good, fresh foodstuffs?
Well, it goes back again to the government and what have you, and what goes on in those communities. Community leadership rise up and discuss these things in food deserts. Right now, under the old administration, they really emphasize, even through the Bush administration, Obama administration, they emphasize food deserts as well, to make sure that quality food was given to those particular communities and not getting the second choice or the third choice food moved to those communities. So you have to bring that to the attention of those local officials and also your local governmental officials as well, those that represent you in D.C.
So how will the minority farmers be able to access this money? And two, how will specifics and guidelines on how they use it?
Okay, out of the $80 billion, there's other funds that's set aside for small farmers, especially farmers of color as well. There's special programs that are set up for them through the Farm Training Program, through the Minority Farmers and Ranchers Advisory Committee, and also through the Beginning Farmers programs that they have set up for them. So they have to wait until everything is accessed. At this time, they're unable to get anything done because right now, you know where we are with our government right now on far as the shutdown. But once those programs come out, it's up to them to apply for those programs. It's best that those farmers and ranchers and other community leaders that deal with agriculture begin to start mobilizing and form different groups so they can get everything collectively without having one apply for one and be denied and nobody else gets anything because I was farmer A and I couldn't get anything, so farmer B and C would not apply for it because they feel as though that they couldn't get it individually. So collectively, they can get a lot more done.
Ask you this: in the past, most of these minority farmers, they kind of kept it in the family. Are they selling to other people now, or what's happening with their land?
Oh, their lands it's kind of hard right now because some of the lands are in air property as well, and that's the problem they're having right now, trying to designate how to come up from under the air property. So hopefully, the funds that's going to the land grant universities, that they're able to take part of those funds to help those farmers and ranchers and other people that have land to come from under the air property and get the records and everything else straight so they'll be able to do much more with the land without it sitting dormant or they have to go to a sheriff's sale.
Gotcha. And I know you all usually go by census every year. You're waiting on that census, which should be out, in a month or so. But how many minority farmers are we looking at that exist right now in Louisiana?
You're looking at close to 4,000. Okay. Yeah, right. And the numbers are not dwindling. We thought about that some time back. But as we lose, you may lose 2 and pick up 3 because you'll get the beginning farmers, you'll get veterans who are returning back to do some things as well.
And very quickly, I have about 30 more seconds left with this, but tell some of the minority farmers what they're producing that people may not know they're getting their foodstuffs from minority farmers.
Well, you can name it from tomatoes to potatoes to greens, soybeans, heirloom products, and they're receiving almost all type of vegetables and what have you, and especially when it comes down to livestock, they're deeply in touch with livestock as well.
As always, your wealth of information, Harvey. Thank you for being with us. Come back again.
Okay.
Let me know what that census shows you all in terms of the growth or whatever of minority farmers as well.
I sure will.
Okay.
Thanks again. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
That's Mr. Harvey Reid. He is the president of the Louisiana Association of Cooperatives. And if you want to get in touch with him, you can do so by going to his website. And I believe that website is hreid, 3 at AOL.com. All right. We'll be back with more news right here on Money Talks, so stay right there. Welcome back to Money Talks. The incarceration of juveniles in the criminal justice system has for decades been a hot button issue. Judges across the country are often at odds on what to do when it comes to those whom are arrested for crimes between the ages of 13 and 16, and in some states as old as 20. By a majority vote of juvenile court judges in Orleans Parish, the court here will no longer impose bail bonds as a condition of pretrial release. This change goes into law effective immediately. Well, joining me in the studio now is an expert on juvenile law. With me is the Judicial Administrator of Orleans Parish Court, Renard Daringsburg, who is also an attorney and has volumes of experience in the area of social advocacy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate
Marshall.
you being
thank
back.
you, Ed. Oh, thank you.
This is such this is a really big issue across the country because everywhere you look, you pick up the paper, the TV, everyone's talking about it. Walk us through how the whole laws for juveniles have changed. It seems from one decade to another.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that. But first, I'll make one little correction in that this doesn't have the force of law. What we have done is change the policy of the court.
Right.
The judges of Orleans Parish Juvenile Court have made the decision that this ineffective practice will be discontinued in our court as it is being discontinued across the country. But you are correct to ask about the trajectory of juvenile justice over the course of a lot of decades. I think
before we do that, we do want to say this is not novel to New Orleans.
This is this is not novel to New Orleans. This, as a matter of fact, the elimination of cash bail, it has been in effect for as long as one can remember. But in Washington, D.C., it's been in effect since the mid-1990s. Washington, D.C. got rid of all cash bail. Most recently, California is eliminating cash bail by law. The governor signed it into law late last year, and as of October of 2019, they will be eliminating cash bail. It is even at the federal level where in 2016, Congressman Ted Lieu from California introduced the No Cash Bail Act. It's a federal act that would eliminate cash bail in all federal cases. And in addition to that, that law would require states to eliminate cash bail within 3 years or run the risk of losing federal funding. So the elimination of cash bail is a movement across the country, but it is a recognition that indigency should not be a condition of release, and one should not be held to lose their liberty simply because they cannot afford to post a bail or a bond.
So that breaks it down simplistically to our folks, to our audience. That's the reason for this.
The reason for it is simply to not make not being able to afford to pay bail a condition of being incarcerated or detained as youth are detained.
Well, no doubt, there are going to be people who will push back on saying that juveniles are committing crimes and they're going to be back on the street. I mean, I'm sure you all hear it all the time. What's your reaction to that, and what's statistically correct?
Well, what statistically is correct is that the reason for bail is twofold. The only reasons for the institution of bail is that if they are a danger to themselves or the community, or if they are at risk of not appearing for court. In the absence of those two instances, bail should not be issued. We're issuing bail to those who will show up at court. And what the statistics say is 80% of people that are released do show up to court. So we aren't talking about a large population of people that are going to be released from jail, or I don't think the public safety is not threatened. Some ask about the data that talks about why we should release people or eliminate bail, but really it is the absence of data that shows that the imposition of bail had any relationship, a positive relationship to public safety or accountability. So the imposition of bail does not in fact ensure that someone will not commit a crime. So the absence of that data doesn't tell us that it works, but what does work is monitoring supervision of youth during the time that they are awaiting adjudication.
Now, what about this? And again, you're talking about pockets of different populations. People who say that, well, this teenager was in jail, now they're back out again, committing a crime again, that kind of thing. So I would gather the judicial system takes a hard-line look at those who have been for lack of a better word, perpetual.
Well, repeat offenders and coming back to court, those are reasons to detain. Those are reasons that say, depending on what their offenses are, when they are out in, what their alleged offenses are when they are out of detention. Those are the reasons that would say, well, this individual child needs to be detained. And that is the work of the judge in juvenile court. I think it is admirable for these judges in juvenile court to take on this responsibility, because what they are doing is taking their role seriously as juvenile court judges, to be quite honest with you. What they've decided to do is we are going to make our determinations based upon the needs of these individuals and their families, and not use blanket policies and laws that for everyone to say, if you can pay to get out, you can get out of jail. What our judges and juvenile court in New Orleans have committed themselves to is paying attention to each case and administering justice fairly and excellently, as our mission says.
You've done a lot of social advocacy, and in terms of and the study of the juvenile brain and that kind of stuff. Give us some statistics on that, because it's fascinating to know about how when crimes are committed, allegedly committed, and what the stages are of that particular person's brain.
Well, thank you for that question, because that's a very important question these days, and it really has everything to do with how juvenile justice is moving and how we should develop programs around juveniles. Yes, what we are learning about brain development now, or what we know about brain development now, is that our brain none of our brains are fully developed until we're about 25 or 26 years old. So the brain of a juvenile, basically what it is that the frontal lobe of the brain that gives our decision-making part of the brain is not developed until the age of 24 or 25. So the ages of 16, 17, risk-taking behavior is a normal action for youth in any community and anywhere. That is because of brain development. And so we are now trying to institute programs in the juvenile court that takes into consideration that risk-taking behavior is a natural part of youth development.
And let's go back to my first question. We talked about how these laws keep changing and stay the same and whatever. So kind of give us a little kind of a package deal.
Well, a lot of people talk about 1967. In 1967, there was a Supreme Court case called In Re v. Galt, and people believe that to be the beginning of juvenile court justice process, if you will. But juvenile court goes back to the late 19th century and the early 20th century, when it was discovered that we want to treat children differently. Back before the 19th century, children were treated just as adults. And when courts began, the decision was that if an individual court believed that the child had the capacity to know whether what they were doing was right or wrong, they would be treated as though they knew what they were doing was right or wrong. So courts have developed over the course of years. And in the mid-60s, in 1967, there was a case in the United States, In Re v. Galt, in which the courts awarded juveniles due process. Some believe this is the beginning of the juvenile court system and how it's developed today, the beginning of how the juvenile court system has developed today. Since 1967, the laws have ebbed and flowed about juveniles and how juveniles are treated in the law. As it began with juveniles being treated rehabilitatively, they were different from adults. As the case law started to develop in the Supreme Court after In Re v. Galt, we began to give them due process. Then there was the cases about whether children could be prosecuted as adults and whether children should have juries. So over the course of time, how juveniles have been treated has been changed. What people also don't know is there is no federal juvenile law. Juvenile courts are divided into the states, so they're just mixed up state laws about how juveniles are treated today. So the laws have changed. So in the mid-'80s, when there was the epidemic, the big drug epidemic, juveniles were treated more harshly. They were treated as criminals. And the laws were changed to reflect that. Now that laws are changing based on the new brain development and the brain science that we are finding out about today, and we're moving back to a more rehabilitative court. While it's very important, and we keep first in our minds public safety and accountability, we must take also into consideration who we're dealing with.
Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because we're going to take a quick break, but you stay here with us, because when we come back, we're going to talk with the chief judge of juvenile court, Miss Judge Candace Anderson, and she's going to give us some more information about this very hot button situation. So everybody out there in our viewership, stay with us, because we're going to have more on this subject when we come back. Well, welcome back to Money Talks. We've been talking about the hot button issue of juveniles and the elimination of bail bonds in terms of making sure that they show up for court. We've spoken with Mr. Darisburg, who works in the judicial system in Orleans Parish in the administrative area. But we're going to talk right now with Judge Candace Anderson, and she's the chief judge over at Orleans Parish Juvenile Court. Judge Anderson, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. We have her on the phone. Let's talk about what prompted the judges to take this action.
Well, we had an en banc meeting, and obviously we always look at what could possibly be the best outcome for kids, but also what is a good outcome for the citizens of our city. And really, we just looked at the issue of bond, and that if we determine that families are indigent and requiring the ability to be able to pay for release really does not ensure any type of public safety. It should not be an issue of whether or not you're released being based on how much money you have.
Okay. And I'm going to ask the same question I asked Mr. Darisburg earlier. I mean, so many people in the public say, well, the juvenile crime allegedly is going up. So is this going to be a problem, or is this going to add to the problem?
Well, certainly this would not be a problem, because you have to remember that, bail is a determination that is made, once the child is detained. Mm-hmm. And most certainly the reasons for charging the bail are if you feel that the person may fail to appear for court, or if they're a danger to themselves or to others. And so to put a monetary figure in place to ensure that someone is going to return to court and to make sure that they're not a danger to themselves or others, most certainly if we were going to release, and we are going to release these kids into the community but for how much money they have, then that certainly does not ensure any type of public safety. That is not going to make the determination of whether or not the public is not safe, because the bond and whether or not a monetary figure is being charged is not going to ensure that another crime is not going to be committed. We are saying that we are charging a fee based on the ability to pay. We're charging a fee for release based on whether or not a family can pay. And that just really, in the terms of these indigent kids that are proven indigent, that does not make sense.
I got you. So that answers our public safety question that I had. So moving forward, what are some of the other things that you all are looking at in terms of juveniles in Orleans Parish?
Well, really, our hope is that this starts a conversation and collaborations of additional programs for kids, that we have additional alternatives in lieu of detention. I mean, we cannot out-incarcerate ourselves out of this problem. Mm-hmm. We have got to give these kids an ability to look and do something different. So when kids when kids come to court, and in lieu of being held as a result of not being able to pay a monetary fee, what if we release them into a program that works? We have alternatives to detention here at the court that we have shown that these kids appear, that it has reduced recidivism, that they participate in the programs. The problem is that we need more of these programs. We need more community involvement. We need more opportunities for these kids to have a chance to do something different and to sit in a non-secure detention, to sit in a secure detention facility in order for their mother or their father or their caregiver or their grandmother to try to be able to raise enough money through whatever means she has to choose, whether it be other children going without, food not being in the house, lights not being turned on, and in lieu of them using that money to try to get a kid out who we felt should be released, were they able to pay this bond? Well, most certainly, if we release the child without a bond, but we release the child participating in another alternative, something that gives them an opportunity to do something different, that's a win-win for everybody, because they are giving tools that they can use later to be greater people.
And that basically comes to, we're talking about partnerships. So you're looking at how you expand with partnerships with other organizations and people in this community that also affect juveniles.
That is correct. We have been working with the mayor's office, the criminal justice office. We've been working with Mayor LaToya Cantrell, Commissioner Tanisha Stevens, with Emily Wolf. We have been in conversation and collaboration about programs that could work. even with the programs of the district attorney's office, programs that they may offer, sometimes the diversion programs, even our own programs of alternatives to detention, our GROW, Girls Reaching Out Works Wonders, our MELLOW, Men Engaging in Leadership Opportunities Works, our ODAP program. These are all programs that, should these kids have an opportunity to see what's in the community, we address mental health issues, we address school-based issues, we address so many factors that may be contributing to some of the behavior that they're exhibiting, and we give them a chance to do something different. That's how this could work.
Judge, thank you so much, and we appreciate you taking the time out to be with us. Good information, and we'll be following up with you in the months ahead. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, and we appreciate the opportunity to be able to tell you how we think that we can all make a difference in the children's lives of the city of New Orleans.
Thank you. Returning to the studio now with Mr. Dariusburg. We're going to wrap this segment up. So basically, what's next?
Well, our overall goal, Ed, is to try to turn what could be into what is. So one of the issues that we want to address is the mental health issues in the court. We believe that mental health is one of the most under-addressed issues in the juvenile justice system and in any court system, quite frankly. We want to now address the mental health issues around juveniles coming into court. We know that the statistics say that about 10 to 12% of the population suffer from mental illness. But what the data tells us in the juvenile court system is that 60 to 70% of children who come into the juvenile justice system have a diagnosable mental disorder. So that we want to begin the process of addressing that at the earliest possible moment, and we believe that those actions can help with juvenile justice.
Okay. We're out of time. Do come back.
Well, I hope to.
Okay. Appreciate you very much. Very knowledgeable on this subject. We're going to be back with more Money Talk, so stay with us because we've got lots more coming your way. It's time for our book of the month. This month, the Book Club Selection Committee chose a children's book written by Emmy Award-winning television anchor that's local and all-around wonderful person and my dear friend, Nancy Parker. The book is about the things two adventurous little birds get into at the Superdome. It's called Adventures of Yat and Dat at the Superdome. It will have the kids and adults as well in stitches, laughing and, of course, learning at the same time. Nancy has yet another book due out on the bookshelves around Mardi Gras, and I'm sure will be a great read as well as all of our previous books. We also hope to have the author on our show when the new book is released. Well, that's going to do it for Money Talks for this month. Until next time, do something good for yourself, do something good for someone else, and always stay in peace, not pieces. We'll see you.